Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup for a Wednesday, January 4th, a special Wednesday edition, pushing everything back a day this week because of the holiday week. And obviously, no waiver wire situations or deadlines to worry about this week with most season-long fantasy football leagues wrapped up and really just kind of going into DFS season. Now, having said that, I say most season-long leagues are wrapped up. There is an element of uncertainty on that as I bring in Spencer the Guru Urquhart here. Um, Spencer, a very odd situation, of course, as we said on Bayou Bets yesterday. First and foremost, thoughts, prayers, positive vibes going out to Damar Hamlin, Buffalo Bills safety who collapsed on the field during the first quarter of the Monday Night Football game and is still in critical condition at the University of Cincinnati Hospital. The good news is they say some positive developments. He's taken some steps in the right direction over the past 12 to 24 hours, so that's good news. We'll hope to continue to hear that. But from a fantasy football perspective, what a mess.
I know, right? Yeah. I was glad to hear that Damar's doing better. Hopefully, it continues to trend in that direction to where he can eventually wake up from his his sedated state. But yeah, just thoughts and prayers his way for sure. Very much hoping and praying that he can come out of that. But yeah, as far as fantasy, just man, it's a mess. It's just a mess because it's like you don't know what to do with because this game hasn't officially been canceled. A lot of leagues I'm in are just the winners have agreed to split whatever money's on the line, and then they're just going to go ahead and, as if the season's over, just going to move on and pay the winners and just call it a season. But if this game would get resumed, then you could be like, well, I mean, that's technically was a week 17 game. We could still count it and finish the season later because I was doing some more thinking about it after our discussion yesterday. I'm thinking that they might use that extra week and they'll still have week 18, but then use that extra week before the playoffs for the Bills-Bengals game and then push the playoffs back a week and just not have the Super Bowl bye. So there is still a chance the game continues, but I feel like in a lot of these leagues, especially our listener league where we needed to hand out the prize this week since it was Saints-Panthers tickets for week 18, I feel like a lot of leagues you just got to pay out your winners and call it a season.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL, for those who have not heard, has basically said that this game will not be resumed this week. Obviously, the Bills and Bengals both have games scheduled on Sunday. The Bills play the Patriots, the Bengals play the Ravens. So you can't, at this point, assuming Week 18 goes forward as scheduled, which we don't know for sure, but if it does, you're not going to play any time before next, let's say Thursday, would be the earliest you could play that game. And unless, like you said, they play Bills Bengals this Sunday, that's the only game they play. They give everybody else the week off. I don't think they're going to do that. I did suggest that on Bayou Bets yesterday, but the problem with that would be, number one, you're making teams and players that have been eliminated. They got to sit around for another week without seeing their families, going to another week of practices. Also, the venues may have, like, let's just pick on Atlanta because that's what we like to do here. Let's say the Falcons, because they knew they wouldn't be hosting a playoff game, scheduled a concert or I don't know, a soccer match or something in that stadium for the weekend following the regular season. And now all of a sudden they're supposed to be home against the Buccaneers. Now you can't do that because we need Mercedes-Benz Stadium for this NFL game. You can just see the problems it would cause, right?
Right. Yeah. What I was thinking, what I meant to say, if I wasn't clear, what I admit was that, you'd still have week 18 this week, but you'd push the playoffs back. And then that week, that would be wild card weekend, would be Bengals Bills, and then have wild card weekend the following week. And so not all these teams would have to be inconvenienced by, all the week 18 teams.
Yeah, and I get you. I'm just exploring different options that the NFL has.
For sure.
Of course, one option is just to cancel the game, and I think that's probably the most likely at this point. And they just use winning percentage to determine playoff seeding. And some teams get a raw deal out of that. The Bills being one of them, because if the Chiefs beat the Raiders on Saturday, then they get the number one seed no matter what the Bills do. And that also then affects now the Bills maybe don't play their starters on Sunday against the Patriots, which would hurt the Dolphins and the Steelers and teams looking for that last AFC playoff spot because the Patriots are playing against backups. Um, it also it in some ways helps the Bengals because they now clinch the AFC North, whereas if they play the Bills and lose that game, lose to the Ravens, there's all these chances, but maybe you just say we cancel it, or you play it like you said a week from now or something. Now, from a fantasy perspective, what this all means is you have some options, right? If you look at ESPN's fantasy homepage or Yahoo's fantasy homepage, I assume others are like this too. I haven't checked. It says, look, these games we've graded out the winners based on the games that were played plus the first like 8+ minutes of that Bills Bengals game. And so if you had Tyler Boyd, you got the points for his touchdown. And so we've graded them out. Now, if they resume this game at any point, even if it's 2 weeks from now, we're going to go back and add in any totals that Josh Allen and Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow get and whoever else you may have in these games. So, you have the option of just holding on and saying, let's wait 2 weeks as a fantasy commissioner and saying, we'll let it play out. If they do cancel it, then we'll come to a decision. You also have the option of letting the two teams in the final figure it out. I have two big money leagues. I'm in the final of one of them, and I was down by 35 points, and I had T. Higgins. And T. Higgins, obviously very unlikely to get 35 points. It is theoretically possible, but I went to the commissioner and I said, look, I concede. I mean, like, if they resume this game in 2 weeks and T. Higgins goes off and scores 4 touchdown passes, I can live with that. I'll take second place money. That's fine. My other league, I'm in the third place game, and I have like a 30-point lead, and I'm facing Gabe Davis. Obviously, I'm very likely to win that, but it's not 100% set in stone yet. And in that league, the other guy I'm playing for third, and we're talking about less money, it's third place, has not come along and conceded. That's fine. We'll wait and see what happens. Or you have, like you said, the option of declaring co-champs.
Yeah, it's tough to decide. What I'm thinking, like, if in leagues that I'm commissioning, I'm thinking I'll probably, leave it up to the people. If they agree to a split, well, then I'll just pay them out. But if they can't agree to that, then, like, I mean, I guess they could just, just let it ride. If they would rather wait to see what happens, and then it just, well, you're not getting your money until it's official, like, so if they
Yeah.
agree to split, well, then you just pay them and it's over.
Yeah, and Skip raises a good point. Like, we learned during COVID, weird things happen. You have to make adjustments. This is unprecedented. And I really do think 90% of people are going to be amenable and say, okay, whatever happens, happens. We can split the pot, whatever. I do think there's probably going to be 10% of cases that are going to be very difficult, where that matchup really was up in the air going into Monday night. It was not, oh, one team has a 5% chance like I do in these leagues. So, yeah, okay, T. Higgins could catch 3 touchdown passes. Gabe Davis could catch 3 touchdown passes. It could happen, but let's be realistic here. But I'm talking about situations where I think you mentioned you have a league where you have a 40-point lead and you have Josh Allen, but you're also facing 4 other players where, there's a reasonable 1/4 chance maybe those 4 players could combine for more than 60 points and knock you out. And so you have these situations where one team clearly has an advantage, but the other team is not, ready to give up, is not ready to let go of the rope, so to speak. And so then you wait. And if they do end up rescheduling the game, even if it's in 2 weeks, okay, great. We have a solution. We let the game play out. Whatever happens, happens. Now, if that doesn't happen, now we've really hit, this is where the rubber meets the road. And as a commissioner, you have to step in and say, either the league votes on it, or I'm going to mandate that you split the pot, or, okay, you had the lead, and so you're getting 2/3 of the pot. I mean, the possibilities are limitless of what you could do in that situation, but that's going to be where it gets sticky.
Right. And as a commissioner, I've suggested splits, but I mean, I haven't forced it. To me, you can't force it as the commissioner. I mean, I feel like you can try to suggest it to the guy that's leading, but I feel like it's one of those things. Technically, you just got to pay them and just hope that they're willing to do the split, because that's the right thing to do. But I mean, technically, it's like, as a commissioner, you kind of have to just, go with what the stats say. It's like, it's one of those. I mean, I guess you can just just say, oh, we're splitting it, but I feel like it's one of those slippery slopes that I feel like to keep your integrity as a commissioner, you've got to leave it up to the team that's leading and hope that they do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think in most cases that will happen. In those cases where it's 60-40 one way or the other, and one team feels like they don't want to chop because they want to keep going. It's kind of like a poker game. If you've ever played tournament poker with buddies, or even in a casino, that they give you the option once you're down to 3 or 4 people, and let's say there's a couple $1,000, and the winner's supposed to get 50% of it, supposed to get 1,000. But if you chop right then and there, okay, all 5 people get $400, and we can all go about our evenings at the casino. Well, like half of the people may have a few more chips than the other 2 people, and they may say, no, 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 I want to keep playing. In this case, that's not really an option. Even if you have more chips, I mean, you could sit and say, I deserve 60% of the pot. I mean, maybe let them negotiate. I don't know. But ultimately, a commissioner, it's his job to step in and make that decision if the 2 people can't do it on their own. That's the way I feel about it. You got to step in and say, I'm the commissioner. Sorry, guys, this is how we're doing it. And if you hurt somebody's feelings and they quit the league over it, I mean, that sometimes leaders have to make tough decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
you're the commissioner of the league. This is where it comes into effect. Hopefully, the competitors can figure it out on their own. If not, now, really difficult is if you're the commissioner and you're in the championship,
Yeah,
and the other
yeah.
person refuses to split. Then you're like, I mean, are you in a situation where you just have to say, okay, fine, I'll give you all the money?
Right, yeah, because some of these leagues are winner take all, so it's like a lot of them. I'm in, second still get something at least. Like that one I'm down in, I told him like, assuming it ends up like this, I'll agree to the split. Because where if it was winner take all, though, I'd probably still would have, but it would have been a lot tougher. I admit it'd be a lot tougher to agree because it'd be like, man, I'm leading. Like, it's like maybe like agree to like a lesser split, maybe like a 75-25 split kind of thing. You would hope the second place guy should be understanding. I feel like if the winner like was ahead by a lot, so you just gotta. It's tricky, but hopefully y'all's league mates are good people and aren't just gonna try to be sleazeballs about it.
Yeah, and I do think most people will. You can imagine some really hairy scenarios, especially when there's a lot of money on the line. And
Yeah.
by the way, if you don't think the NFL realizes that this is a thing, then you don't know the NFL. I think the NFL. I think this might be the best argument for why the NFL will force those teams to play, because there's a bunch of fans who want to see it played to determine their flipping fantasy football championships. As crazy as that sounds, it's got to be a factor in those conference rooms and those video conferences where they're discussing this. And I know playoff seeding and all that stuff should be more important on the surface. And obviously, all of it pales in comparison to Damar Hamlin's health, the mental health of the Bills and Bengals players who were on that field when that happened. All of that stuff is more important, but it is a factor. And I guarantee you, somebody in those rooms has brought it up. So
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm thinking that there's still a chance that's why they're not canceling it. I still think there's a decent chance that the game gets played and that they have that bye week before the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, the Pro Bowl, nobody cares about that. And they could just
you
cancel
cancel the
that. And
Pro Bowl. Come on. Yeah.
exactly. And have the championships that week.
Yeah. It's it's just
It's a mess. It's a
it's a
mess.
mess, and the easiest solution would be they will end up playing it in a couple of weeks, but again, there's greater forces at work here, and if that's
Yeah.
not the best thing for the Bills and the Bengals and that community and for Damar Hamlin, then they won't do it, and that's how
Right.
they should do it. So we'll continue on here. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. You can go to lsuposter.com if you're a new Caesars customer. Bet a minimum of $10 and receive a 3-poster commemorative set of front pages from the past. Also have New Orleans Saints posters in there. So cool deal. Go to lsuposter.com for that. We are going to continue to do fantasy shows all the way through the Super Bowl. It's going to be pivoted toward DFS and player props as we go forward. But Spencer, obviously very good at those as well. Season-long fantasy over for almost everybody. I suppose there's a few Week 18 championships out there, but if you do that, you're weird and wrong, and don't do that anymore because just look at the starting quarterbacks in the NFL this week. You don't want to have a
Nathan
fantasy
Peterman.
championship this week. Nathan Peterman,
Jarrett
maybe Blaine
Stidham.
Gabbert, like
Ugh.
you know, I, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like all these David Blau from Arizona,
Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins. Like it's ugly out there. So don't do week 18. You got to change that, especially now that it's an 18-week season. Plenty of time to get everything done by week 17. So, in fact, I would even argue to make week 16 the championship week still, because you saw some starters getting sat last week in the league I'm in, where I'm in the championship. I had Derrick Henry, and he really helped me all season long. And then all of a sudden in championship week, Titans decide to sit him because the game doesn't matter to them, and that hurt me. So, um, you know, I don't do week 18, but we will recap week 17 as we always do. Go into some DFS for week 18, and then going forward, talk more player props and get into some fantasy basketball and eventually fantasy baseball as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm excited for fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball. We've got going on now. It's going pretty good. But yeah, fantasy baseball is always a good time. And then you get in on the NBA DFS. I know they got that going down too. So yeah, still a lot going on out there.
Absolutely. So our MVPs for week 17, Spencer, you went with Austin Eckler, ran all over the Crosstown Rams.
Right. Yeah, I actually had him in my championship that was decided on Sunday. So I got, that one I'm gonna get paid out and everything, since that one's already done before the unfortunate stuff for Monday. But yeah, Eckler just absolutely just carried me all year and carried me once again in this championship week, man. It just ripped off that long run that really sealed it. And just like, because at that point I figured I was gonna win, but I was like, I need like one more big play to kind of give me enough of a cushion to like really feel good. And that Eckler play, well, that was it. That's when I knew, all right, I'm the champion. I can breathe easy. So yeah, I had to, even though Mike Evans and Brady were the top scorers, I had to go with Eckler because that moment is what got me that championship.
And that's always a great moment. I did for my MVP. I went with Mike Evans, and I listen, Saints fans, I feel you, because if it weren't for Mike Evans, the Saints are still in the NFC South race today, and we're having a totally different conversation when it comes to Saints Panthers on Sunday, because they could still very easily win the South. However, look, it was a game changing performance by Mike Evans in real life, and if you had him on your fantasy team or you were facing him, the guy with Mike Evans almost certainly won. 207 yards, 3 touchdowns. Especially, I have one league where you get bonuses for long touchdowns. Um, and I will tell you what, that guy, just everything he caught was a long touchdown, it seemed like. 48.7 points in a standard PPR scoring. I'm actually going to go check and see what he scored in this league where I get bonuses for long touchdowns. I don't think he was actually involved in the championship match, but pretty spectacular stuff if that was the case.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it was finally good. I actually had it was crazy in that league with Eckler. I had the Evans Brady stack. It's a super flex league, and so they were, I had them, but they weren't really like just guys that Evans would be like a flex play, and then Brady, the super flex. Like I wasn't really expecting them to do a whole lot, but yeah, with them going off, it made it to where like because the other guy had a few guys go off like CD Lamb and I forgot who, a couple others. So I was like, well, with this Brady Evans thing, I've got a nice cushion, but I need a little bit more. And so then the Eckler thing really put me over the top. But in reality, I could say all three. It's a trio of MVPs for me: Brady, Eckler, Evans.
By the way, in that league where you get long touchdown bonuses, 67.7 points for Mike Evans. So it's pretty tough to lose if he was on your side, unless the other guy was just totally stacked. All right, so that's week 17. That's championship week, at least to what we can say that it is. Again, we'll talk more about it next week if it's still going on. It's possible that Bills Bengals game, as you say, uh, one one option I think Mike Florio threw out there that I found to be interesting would be they'll play week 18 as scheduled. Then the following week, the weekend of January the 15th, they will play the NFC wildcard games and Bills Bengals. And then
Mm.
the following week, the NFC teams would get the week off. The AFC wildcard teams would play. Um, including the Bills and the Bengals or whoever doesn't get the bye. And then starting the week of January the 29th, everybody's playing again. So you have divisional round the 29th, you have conference championships February 5th, and then Super Bowl Sunday, February 12th. So that's one. And Mike Florio did not just float this idea. He said it's actually gaining traction in the NFL. So there's something to that. Now, look, I don't know if that's going to be the case. If that is the case, you're going to have playoff games and fantasy football championships decided in the same way. It would be a crazy weekend.
Yeah.
Um, Also, the other problem with that is if you're, let's say you're the Eagles who finally clinch home field in the NFC playoffs this weekend by beating the Giants, you wouldn't play again for 3 weeks because you would have the bye for NFC wildcard weekend. Then you would have NFC wildcard. All the NFC teams would have a bye, and you wouldn't play again until January 29th. So you'd have a 3 week gap. So that's one negative. Don't know what they'll do, but we will see. One thing we do know, at least at this point, is we have a week 18 schedule. And so we went ahead and did our DFS values for the Sunday slate. The two Saturday games, Raiders, Chiefs, and Titans, Jaguars. But with the Sunday main slate, here's what you came up with, Spence.
Yeah, to go with Andy Dalton, man, he's dirt cheap at 4,800. I know he's struggled the past couple weeks, like passing, didn't really put up much numbers, but I mean, he gets to go against the Panthers secondary that just got torched by Tom Brady. Who Tom Brady this year had been terrible. I mean, up until week 17, Tom Brady had not been putting up numbers, so that tells me the Panthers secondary must be really bad. And I looked at it; they've got a lot of injuries. J.C. Horn, their young corners out there, other top corners out. So they're down their top two corners, and they can't cover anybody right now. So I think Dalton and Rashid Shaheed makes for a really nice value stack there. And whoever, can you put it back up, please? I can see
I'm
my.
sorry, Spencer.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're good. Najee Harris, running back. I mean, he's a little pricey at 6,100, but not really though, considering how well he's trended up as of late, and gets a really good matchup against Cleveland. And then Tyler Conklin, heavily targeted by Mike White, and gets a really good matchup against the Dolphins.
So that is your DFS values, and Rashid Shaheed. By the way, Luke Johnson tweeted something out, and I'm looking for it. Saints beat writer at the Times-Picayune and advocate. Rashid Shaheed is the only player in the NFL, in NFL history, to have better than 18 yards per catch while
Wow.
also catching 80% of his targets with a minimum of 30 career targets. And this is since 1992 when the first time they tracked targets. So, but that's really the modern era of the NFL as far as the passing game is concerned, the last 30 years. So average better than 18 yards per catch while catching at least 80% of his targets. Now, he doesn't get a ton of targets, but this is a guy, as we start to turn the conversation to next year and who you target and stuff, Rashid Shaheed has some serious star potential.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, he's kind of doing what we all thought Deontay Hardy was going to do. I know a lot of Saints fans are really high on him, and he had his little flashes, but just could never string consistency together. Rashid Shaheed now, I mean, it's not like 4 or 5 weeks of pretty consistent production. I mean, I'm starting to think he's going to stick around to where next year, I mean, Jarvis Landry, he's as good as gone, where like if maybe, just maybe, a healthy Michael Thomas, I know a lot of Saints fans want him out the door as well. But the fact is, with his contract, you just got to hope he can get healthy. And then you could have a 3-wide set of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and then Michael Thomas probably in the slot there. That's, if all those are healthy, that's a lethal 3-wide set.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm not Jim Derry will trash Andy Dalton all year long. I don't think Andy Dalton's terrible. I don't think anyone can say he's better than average. So what if all of a sudden you hit on a rookie quarterback in the third round, or you're able to bring a free agent in trade for a Derek Carr? I don't, who knows? But you have an upgraded quarterback along with those guys. Rashid Shaheed, man, I'm not touching Michael Thomas at all. I don't think the Saints can trade him because his value will never be lower. But Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, you add a good quarterback there. All of a sudden, you may really have something next year.
Right, yeah, maybe draft another young receiver to where if Mike doesn't get back, then you could have another young gun, or they maybe sign another veteran. Hopefully it's a shame. Jarvis Landry, I thought, was going to have a really nice year, but just never really panned out, just too many injuries. But yeah, I mean, it's Saints, and then Juwan Johnson, you still got Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara. I mean, you got a lot of weapons, so the Derry Downer yesterday had me disappointed. I mean, these last few weeks, I mean, I would have been a downer all year, but the way the Saints have been trending lately, I've got a lot more hope than I did.
Yeah, there's definitely a coulda, woulda, shoulda element to all of it, especially with that second Bucks game. I get that, but I do think that these last 3 weeks have shown you that when healthy, this team has been able to show like it's a top half NFL team, or maybe even a top 10 NFL team. So I think that potential is there. Now, obviously, it's an aging roster, and we'll talk much more about that. But that's Spencer for Week 18 likes that Saints stack. I'm going to go with Geno Smith. The Rams have been torched, quite frankly, by opposing offenses, except for the Broncos, who are a whole nother level of mess, or at least they were that Christmas Day game. But the Seahawks need to win that game. I think they will go all out to win that game. Kenneth Walker, a nice look too, but Geno's 6,000 flat. David Montgomery of the Bears, a little bit more expensive, but with the Bears starting Nathan Peterman, they're going to run the ball a lot. And you can run on the Vikings defense. I don't think the Bears are going to win the game. But if David Montgomery gets 20 touches in this game, 6,500 is going to be a bargain against that Vikings defense. Like Drake London for the Falcons, the Bucks not great at defending opposing number one receivers anyway. I think the Bucks will probably rest some starters. And Drake London has had at least 8 targets now 4 weeks in a row, including all 3 games with Desmond Ridder. So the Falcons really targeting him. I think, they're trying to see what do we have with this kid. And so he should get some targets. 4,900, extreme value there. And then the tight end went Dawson Knox. Again, Bills facing the Patriots. Don't know if Josh Allen's even going to be playing. My guess is he is. I get it's tough if they outright cancel that game and then the Chiefs win Saturday. Bills have nothing to play for. Maybe they do rest him. So keep an eye on that. But with the Patriots pass rush, it's not a situation where the Bills are going to have receivers, up 40 yards downfield throwing bombs all the time. The Patriots don't allow that. So dumping off to Dawson Knox, a distinct possibility.
Yeah, I think the Patriots have been somewhat vulnerable to tight ends, but I'd be a little leery about starting any Bills, in DFS, even if they play, because it's like, they're going to be so emotional coming off the Damar. I mean, it could work in their favor. They could come out supercharged, like we're doing this for Damar and put up amazing numbers, or it could be the opposite where they're just so they can't quite lock in enough. So yeah, it's just kind of a risky
It
proposition
is.
there.
Yeah, it is. And in DFS, sometimes pivoting on something like that when other people might be gun shy um, can be good strategy. So I hear what you're saying. I happen to think these guys are pro athletes. Once they get in between those white lines, that switch will flip and they'll go back to playing ball. But, we'll see. And again, that game may not mean anything to them. And then that would change everything because they're not even going to play guys. But we'll see. Here are your totals for week 18. Interesting, real low totals across the board. Nothing above average except for those two, the Saturday game and then the Sunday night game, which is not included in most NFL DFS slates. So those are the 2 high scoring games. If you do have a week 18 season long, target those games. But other than that, kind of dreary. And a lot of that is the quarterback play, Spencer. Not a lot of starting quarterbacks going this week.
Right, yeah, a lot of teams are just, they're either looking ahead to next year or they're just like, they just don't have any available bodies. Like, it's just, this is ugly. This is one of the ugliest, like, week 18s I've ever seen as far as, like, a lot of the teams that are out of it they usually still have their good chunk of their starters. But this year, I feel like a lot of those teams are just like, man, they're either injured or they're just turning the page to next year. A lot of, and it's kind of the deal where, like, the teams are getting to where they fire coaches so quick and want to make these sweeping changes where I feel like hopefully this is like the breaking point. I was reading this article on ESPN about they were saying how the owners sent out this big thing to like the GMs, I believe, telling them like, stop firing all these coaches. It's like racking up like billions in expenses, having all these buyouts and stuff because they're so impatient with wanting to fire coaches after 1-2 years. So I'm thinking and all these mid-season firings. I think we had like 3 mid-season firings. So it's like, yeah, hopefully that kind of tails off, because it's like you got to build something. You got to give coaches time to build something. You can't expect a coach to come into what's already a kind of a down bad organization and expect them to just wave a magic wand and have it all fixed. So yeah, hopefully I'm not saying to play fantasy week 18, definitely keep that shut down. But I'm just saying, speaking just from an NFL fan perspective, it's just so much bad football this week.
Yeah, it's not terribly excited about this weekend, honestly. Even that Lions Packers game, which I think will be a great game. It'll be prime time, all that stuff. It's the way it's set up. If the Seahawks win in the afternoon, the Lions are already eliminated. I still think they're going to play hard, try to eliminate the Packers, their
Oh
rivals,
yeah, it's
get a big win.
rivalry. Yeah.
I think they will, but it does take some luster off that game. Where if that's a 3 o'clock game, same time as Seahawks Rams, those teams are going to, you really got a lot of drama because there's scoreboard watching going on. Both teams think they've got a chance. It's one of the more unexciting weekends. And then the pallor cast by the Damar Hamlin situation just adds to it. It's one of the NFL weekends I've least looked forward to in a long time. So, hopefully that feeling will come back by the playoffs. One question from Skip, if he's still watching: do you think Cleveland Browns coach best fit for the talent they have? I think Kevin Stefanski is a good coach. This was a really weird year in Cleveland. The Deshaun Watson situation, knowing you weren't going to get him back until week 13, basically being on the brink of elimination by then anyway. Then he comes back and, quite frankly, not very good those first couple of weeks. It's hard to read a whole lot into this year's Browns team.
Yeah, I would probably give Stefanski at least one more year because, I mean, he had been doing a good job over there. I don't know. I think, though, that Skip brings up a good point. I don't think he's the best fit for that talent. He seemed like the kind of coach that almost would do better with just a very conservative kind of quarterback. Like, he could make a case their offense was better with the Jacoby Brissett. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like I would probably give him one more year, but if you could try to get like a Kellen Moore or something, like a more offensive minded, like pass first coach. If you brought in Deshaun Watson, you paid him all this money. I mean, you didn't pay him all this money to hand the ball off. And Kevin Stefanski is more like that zone run kind of coach. And like, I don't know. I think they'll probably keep him, but it wouldn't shock me if they part ways.
Yeah, I don't think they'll get rid of him. And as far as the running, yeah, I mean, they got good running backs. Look, and Deshaun Watson's not playing very well. So what are you supposed to do if you're Kevin Stefanski? I mean, now
Yeah.
maybe during the offseason, Deshaun Watson kind of gets back in his groove and they decide to change things. But as of right now, I think I'd do the same thing. They got good running backs. They got a good offensive line. The quarterback's struggling. You got a good defense. Yeah, you're going to run the ball. That's good strategy. So anyway, that will do it for us. We'll be back next Tuesday, back to regular schedule, 2 p.m. Tuesday. We'll continue to discuss what happens with season-long fantasy championship games, and we'll talk player props, DFS, that sort of thing for Wild Card Weekend. So, Spencer, looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, prayers and thoughts to Damar Hamlin. Hopefully he can pull through so he can get back to football, man. That's what we love to do and talk about. So, yeah, hopefully we can have the season end on a positive note.
All right, for Spencer the Guru, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Fantasy Roundup. Bayou Bets tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on these same channels. 4 p.m. Bayou Bets, myself and Jim Derry will be along. Thanks, everybody.